Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the War Room, which is our interview series as part of the Clone Star Pod. I am your host, Sean Ferrick, and joining me is just okay, let me just run through what this man does. He is a musician, a painter, a writer, director, performer, teacher, public speaker, advocate for disability arts. He does a one-man show where he paints the entire audience during the performance. Good God, I could barely watch the show. Anyway. I am so happy to be joined by my favorite Aenar in the world. It is Bruce Horak. How are you, sir?
Favorite Aenar. Nice. I feel blessed and honored. Thank you, Sean. It's really nice to chat with you. I've been a big fan for a long time.
Yeah. It's like, honestly, that touches me right where my soul should be. What that you say that. It's so fun. Like, myself and I know Chris as well, who makes Trek Culture with me and my co-host show, and Mike. Like, it's so often we sit there and we're like, kind of, we now know that there's a bit of a reach, but in the beginning, God, we never expected anyone to watch these kind of shows or anything like that. It was like, we were just delighted to get them every week. And then you said, we're like, oh yeah, grand, that's grand. And then the first thing that goes through my head is like, have I ever said anything bad about Hemmer? Oh God, have I ever downed Hemmer in any way? Oh no,
never. Not that I remember. Well, I'll tell you, like my history with Star Trek is long and not sordid. Anyway, it's a very long history, and when there was a big period in my life where I was watching other things and sort of it had fallen out of my sphere, as it were. And when the casting call went out for Strange New Worlds, and I started to dig into, okay, what's an Aenar? And I went back and watched Enterprise, and then I started digging into Memory Alpha, and I started going on the web, and the resources are just incredible. And then I'm like on YouTube, I think, oh, maybe I'll see if anybody's talking about Trek. And then there's Trek Culture coming up, and I'm like, oh my God, like not only is it's full of like passion and joy for the franchise, but also like, yeah, let's be a little bit critical about it, and let's talk about what's working, what's not working. And as a creator myself, I just find that kind of feedback invaluable, because it's coming directly from fans. It's not just somebody who's like, I didn't watch it, or dismisses it or whatever. It's like, no, we actually really care about these stories and these characters, and if you're going to tell us something about this character, we're going to believe you, and we're going to follow that road and get invested in it. And honestly, the investment has just been incredible. So yeah, I mean, I know a lot of actors that don't want to read the press, and they don't want to, they have to just focus on the show. I totally respect that, but I've been a self-producer most of my life, so reviews matter, but thoughtful reviews. And I had a mentor very early on who said, well, if you're going to believe every positive thing, then you have to leave room for the negative too. And those are both things to learn from. And yeah, I agree with that. And honestly, off the top of my head, I don't think you've ever said anything negative about Hemmer. And if you have it, I can always put the distance of I didn't write it.
I like it as well. Well, let me tell no.
If you don't take credit, you don't have to take blame. That's another thing my mentor has taught me.
That's a really good bit of advice, actually. Yeah, that's a really good. Yeah, but actually, I never write an episode of Trek Culture, and actually, it's all deep faked. It's not me in the videos either.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Look, obviously, as you're saying, you've been a producer your whole life. Good. Do you sleep?
Do I sleep? Not well. Well, no, I shouldn't say not well. Not long. I do sleep well, but yeah, I just love it. I love the creative life and the creative act, and I get really jazzed about the projects I'm working on. But yeah, not a lot of spare time. I do spend, although the last 5 weeks I've been spending a lot of time in this hotel room, mostly painting. The bed is right there. I can always nap. That's a circuitous way of saying yes, I do.
I like it. It's like, I do. And yesterday I got a whole 20 minutes.
Got to recharge.
But I see this way, like you seem to be almost constantly painting, at least, and then acting on top of that, and touring with shows. As you mentioned, the last 5 weeks, just before we started this episode, we were talking about you're performing in Richard III at the moment, which unfortunately by the time this episode releases will have wrapped. So I hope the show went really well.
It did. Yes.
Excellent,
Yes.
excellent. I'm
Really well.
delighted to hear that. And it. So, am I right in saying it was 2011 that was it 2011 you started doing portraits of people, or that you decided I'm going to give painting a bash?
April 1st, 2011, I sat with a friend of mine and he asked me, he'd known me for years, and he said, "How do you see?" I had just started using a white cane. And so he was curious about whether or not I had been losing my eyesight or what was going on. And I said, "Well, no." And I kind of explained to him that I'd lost 91% of my eyesight to cancer as a baby. And he'd known me for years. He didn't know any of this story. And that, I only see about 9%. I've got limited tunnel vision. And as I was explaining it, I'm like, well, maybe I should try to just show you how I see. So we sat together for about 3 hours, and I got some paint and a canvas, and I tried to paint how I see him. And then I just kept doing that. That night, so talk about serendipity. But as we were sitting and chatting, this is my friend Brandon. His wife texts him and says, "I need you to stop at the art store on your way home today. I need you to pick up some canvas. I've got to finish a commission." Now, his wife is a painter, professional, awesome, Marcia Harris, and she was putting a commission together for an exhibition of portraiture that was happening in Toronto. And Brandon was like, "Oh." Kind of read the application submission deadlines and said, "Oh, they're looking for artists to do portraiture and interpret the way that they see. This is exactly what I'm working on." So I sort of hung up my shingle and said to friends, I'm like, "Hey, I'm working on some portraits. Will you come and sit?" And in about a week and a half, I had 25 portraits to choose from. Sent one of those off and was accepted into a gallery show in Toronto. And this is when I started to meet other artists and started to meet visually impaired artists as well, and people active in disability arts, visual arts. And I just got so hooked on painting. I ended up in that first year doing 365 portraits.
Good God.
And then, well, yeah. So speaking of mentors, my mentor, Keith Johnstone, I remember in a class once, he was doing sketches of people. And he said, "Oh, he'd read somewhere that if he did 10,000 sketches, that eventually you'd start to actually get good at it." So he'd been kind of working on this sketch project. And Keith was also visually impaired. He had lost the eyesight in one of his eyes when he was a child. I think a kid stabbed him in the eye with a pencil or something. Anyway, some gruesome tale. Anyway, Keith and I kind of connected on vision. And as I started painting these portraits, I thought, and I had misremembered what Keith had said. And like, oh, if I did 1,000 hours, I can get that done in a year. Well, it's not 1,000 hours, it's 10,000 hours. Anyway, I just kept going. And what I discovered over those portrait sittings was how much I just love sitting and hanging out. And it gives an opportunity to do something. I sort of create the painting, and the painting captures the conversation that I've had. But yeah, I'm getting close to 1,000 now. And I sit with people all over the world over Zoom. And certainly since the notoriety of Star Trek, more people have heard about the project, and I'm inching my way closer to my 1,000 portraits, which will have to probably end up being 10,000. But no, I love it. And it's developed into landscape painting and other commissions. And eventually it wound its way into doing a one-person show called Assassinating Thompson, where I paint a portrait of the entire audience. So everyone that comes to see the play, I got a big canvas and I do a big portrait, and I tell the story of how I became a visually impaired visual artist. And I solve the mystery of who killed Tom Thompson, who was a Canadian painter who died mysteriously in 1917. And the mystery has yet to be solved.
Okay, that's a lot. First of all, that is
I didn't take a break. I'm sorry.
Not at all. No, that is, and
well, that's painting. That's painting.
Well, it does seem like, I suppose, like so much of the arts, that it's sort of feast or famine. Like it's all in, and it seems like at least for yourself, for the last 12 years, which is what it would take me to do one portrait. You've done like 365 in a year, but. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the frustrations you must have had? Like something that maybe didn't come out the way you wanted it to, or something that did come out the way you wanted it to, and then you realized it wasn't what you wanted.
Oh, wow. Frustrations. Well, I mean, on the daily, it's certainly with every painting, there comes a point in the painting where I think it looks like garbage. And certainly I've had a few shows where I'm, the show runs, I think, 80 minutes. Assassinating Thompson, I paint for 80 minutes. And there have been points where I'm at the 79-minute mark and I take a big step back and look at it and I go, okay, I got a minute to make this work. And there's something about the pressure of that. I guess what it kind of comes down to is that when I'm in those moments of frustration, whether it's in painting or writing or creative or whatever, that having a deadline, having to be accountable to something is like the best motivation there is. It's why I love to get up and improvise, because there's no rehearsal. It's just like get up and go and do this thing and keep making mistakes. And Keith would often talk about failing forward, making those mistakes and then learning from it and what's the next one. I find that to be really valuable in the creative process. I'm not always, I'd certainly say in my 20s, I wasn't terribly good at setting deadlines, like end dates, and then following through on them, like making them hard and saying, no, it's got to be done by 9 a.m. this day. So if I could go back in time and teach myself one lesson, I think that would be it. Just give yourself a deadline and follow through, make yourself accountable to it. I'm getting better at that. And I think that's probably why I spend much more of my waking hours creating than thinking about creating or talking about it, just getting to it and doing the work.
That's actually, that's a really, really interesting point that I think a lot of creators are going to go, yes, the thinking about creating versus actually creating. And one can be even, I think the thinking about creating can be even more tiring than the creating, because there's a tangible sense of I've done something after actually creating. But there's many times I've caught myself. I mean, I'm not even going to joke. I have caught myself on the couch in the dressing gown. We're midway through the day, and I've gone, I really need to work on that list, or I really need to get that video done. My boss is going to kill me. Yeah,
that is a great motivator, isn't it?
Isn't it though? Like, one day maybe it will work toward a thing where, like, maybe breakfast could be motivation, or kind of I'll work till lunch or something. And I was like, no, I'll work until I feel the slight breath on the back of my neck gets a little bit further away.
Do you ever use a timer?
I have a method. It's very varying, and it's the soundtrack to Dunkirk. So it's just in and around the hour, and it's got this, obviously this kind of theme of a kind of a ticking, not a ticking clock, but that kind of consistent beat that's dun 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 dun, and then I find that is very good for getting the heart rate going. And if you're in the zone, you can catch it. I find it's very motivating. So I find if I've got a deadline, the Dunkirk soundtrack goes on. If I don't have a deadline, the Interstellar soundtrack goes on, and I may get 5 words written that day.
Yeah, and it's funny how the themes of those two movies tie into, like, one is like pressing, it's got to happen now, and the other one's like, well, here we go on a journey.
Yeah, very much so. And then, so, which begs the question: do you use a timer yourself? I mean, obviously in the show, but outside of the show.
I wish I could apply that same stringentness. I've heard of this, like, set a timer for 45 minutes, take a 15-minute break, and then set another 40. And when I did do this once. I shouldn't lie. I did do this once when I had to do my taxes. And it was about just gathering receipts and putting them in categories and figuring all of that out. So yes, I have done it when office work is pressing, but when it's pure creative work, it's like last thing I want is a timer, because I could get lost for 5 hours in a painting, or I could get frustrated after 15, and I'd rather not be tied down if I'm just frustrated after 15. Although, again, the voices of mentors always prevalent, and present. One of my painting teachers says, well, if you're stuck painting, just keep painting, which is difficult advice to follow. He was also the mentor who said, I don't call myself an artist. I let somebody else decide that. I get up and paint. I don't get up and art.
That is,
I kind of like that. Yeah, he might have been trapped in semantics.
I like, because but then, like, what happens if someone says, like, don't worry, I wouldn't call you an artist either. It's like, all right, well, hell, like, you don't need to be mean about it, like,
Yeah.
Which is exactly the kind of thing that I know me and my friends would say. Sure, there's like, I don't call myself a writer, I just write. None of us were calling you that, Sean. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Oh, all right then.
Yep, you can scratch that up your resume. Oh,
grand, straight to the core of me. But now, I obviously am not. I would not just call you a painter by any means, because you are not, of course, just a painter. You are a talented actor, as well as many other things. I read that list that is just like half a paragraph in the beginning of like things to associate to you. But certainly, so I got introduced to you via the antennae. And it was incredibly cool because you have such a great introduction scene as well in Strange New Worlds. But I suppose we're all dying to know, what is it like to stand on the Enterprise, in this lovely latex mask, with the big, massive, sharp knife in your hand? It sounds like the start of a horror movie, but what is it like?
Oh, wow. I wish I had words for it. I really do. It was, yeah, the moment honestly, it's such a blur, but I was shaking. My first day where I actually got to go onto the set, they had done a 5.5 hour makeup test. So I was in the prosthetics chair as they were working out the coloring and everything. And then they put me into my costume and brought me onto the bridge. Actually, they had been shooting a bridge scene, so they were doing a camera test to see what I looked like. And yeah, I was shaking. My hands were like this, and I thought, oh, if I open my mouth, and they're going to hear my squeaky voice, and I'm going to lose the job or something. All that imposter syndrome for sure. But the moment that the camera turned on, and they said, look this way, look that way, and say something, and I think I just sort of burbled my name or something, and maybe shed a tear. It was very emotional. It was very emotional. It seemed so far outside the realm of where my life was going to end up. I'd spent most of my formative years and years up until that. I mean, we were in the middle of, the pandemic. So everything felt like, certainly in the performing arts for me, my history was as a street performer, as a self-producer, touring fringe festival circuits and doing children's theater in gymnasiums for 300 kindergarten to grade 6 kids, and that was the life that I'd sort of thought, well, yeah, eventually there's a working model of the working Canadian actor, which is going, region to region, 5 weeks here, 5 weeks there, and just kind of living that to some degree. I refer to it as being a Homo sapien.
Sorry,
and I thought that ultimately was where I was going to end up. And Trek had certainly been like a bass tone in my life. I watched all the series and grew up on it. And when this audition came up, it just seemed so far outside. And then as I was getting closer and closer to it, I'm like, this is almost real. And then that truly the moment of realization was standing on the bridge of the Enterprise. Like, what? Yeah. Yeah, and then every day just felt like a gift of, yeah, honestly, Sean, there's just no words for it. I wish there was.
I think the track, including myself, but the track is listening to this right now, watching this right now. They're going to be like, we may not have shared that feeling, and yet when we say we understand. Like, I hope you get that. Oh no, like I know, like, I'll step onto the bridge of the Enterprise at some point, security be damned, and I will have that moment of like, I will have that freeze moment. So again, heads up, security, don't worry, I'm gonna freeze as soon as I stand on the bridge. But it's because of the weight that comes with that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And then, like, everyone just fell in love with Hemmer. And it was just wonderful. And that kind of dry, gruff, and yet completely lovable character as the season went on, and we love to see the team up, particularly, you know, Hemmer and Uhura. This was a wonderful team up. And the magic of science, we still laugh about that. And then I just need to know who's the bastard I have to go after who said, hey, let's bring the Gorn in. So we need to have a conversation with that person because, you know, no one hurts my Hemmer.
Oh, very kind. It's very kind. I wish I knew who was the genius behind it. I was told very early on in the audition process, Henry Alonso Myers and I think it was my last audition actually. So I'm in my kitchen in Stratford, Ontario, and he's in LA somewhere. We're chatting about the arc of Hemmer, and he, like, full disclose, said, listen, this is what we're planning to do with this character. And he said, and I'll tell you straight up, it was very, very difficult to do. Nobody wanted to write that episode because they had all, by the time they'd gotten there, they themselves had fallen in love with this character. And, you know, I'm sure I'm totally speculating here. Here's some speculation, but I'm sure that that writer's room, which I guess was all over Zoom, was a muck. Pardon my reference, but I think it was a muck with people coming up with sci-fi ideas of, yeah, but if we plant this in, then we can bring it back here. And oh yeah, what about this? And because it's just that I can imagine the world that those writers are in and how thrilling that would be. But given that Uhura has to make a very difficult decision from her opening speech about her family and her desire to maybe keep traveling or experiencing other things or not settling down or whatever it might be, for her to make a friend and witness their sacrifice for chosen family and her decision to, okay, I'm choosing to make this my family now. I think it was brilliant. It broke my heart, but I will say that knowing it was coming and waiting for that script, it was a nail biter. And I just kept thinking, please make it cool. I know he's got to go, but please make it a cool death. And it really was. Like, I squealed when they read, when we had the cast reading. My one terrible regret was that the day that we read episode 109, we were shooting, I think, a scene in episode 108 or something. So we would have to do the cast reading over Zoom, and everyone would go to their trailers and kind of do the reading. And like right from the moment, right before we started reading the scene where he's going to, you know, saying his goodbyes and everything, I'm hearing a pounding on the trailer. We gotta do touch-ups. We gotta do touch-ups. I'm like, okay, just give me 5 minutes. We're almost there. And it's like, okay, coming right there. Boom, 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 boom. Come on, we gotta go. We gotta go. And so I finished my, you know, live long and prosper, friend. And just like Andori, I read that line. Oh, sorry, spoilers. Ooh. And I read the line, and then I literally, like, I got to go. And I just turned off my Zoom and ran off to set. And then 25 minutes later, I can't remember who I ran into, but maybe one of the PAs who said, oh, you missed, like, the Davy Perez, like, did a really beautiful speech about Hemmer, and they talked, like, after the cast reading was done. So I missed all that. But in a way, it was funny. Like, I was kicking myself a little bit later in the day. I should have just said, you know, give me 5 minutes or whatever. I'm on the can. I should have pushed a bit more to at least, you know, be a part of that. But I got to see the scene that they shot, the funeral scene, and that felt like that was the beautiful button on the Hemmer experience for me. Yeah, without giving anything else away.
Actually, without saying anything. But I think one of the reasons it works as well as it does, I mean, and we were angry when poor Hemmer, what happened, but it works because we liked him, because he had found his way into our hearts. And one of the things we've said about Strange New Worlds consistently is that it's been so successful at making, you know, outside of the core three, these characters are fleshed out, they are believable, they are people, so that if something bad was to happen, it matters. And it mattered when something happened to Hemmer. So you are coming back to life, right? I mean, that this is for sure. Yeah, we'll see you in season 2.
All I can legally say is that the Star Trek career of Bruce Horak is not over.
That is a wonderful phrase. and I will be holding on to being like, we've only, well, at this stage, I think, as of recording, we've just over a month and a half to go until we see the beginning of Strange New World Season 2.
That's right, June 15th, yeah?
Yes, cannot wait. Because it feels like it's been so long.
It really does. It really, really does. I gotta tell you how thrilling that was too. We got special cast screeners before the premiere of season 1, and every moment of it was just this like, what? I can't believe, because I didn't know I was going to be in the opening credits, so my name shows up in episode 1. I'm like, what? I didn't think I was even in episode 1. The very last thing I shot was they said, oh, go stand on the transporter. We might put a little bumper of you in episode 1. It wasn't written in the script that Hammer beams on. So I'm like, okay, that was the very final shot, was me standing on the transporter. I thought, oh, maybe that'll make it into the beginning of the season of episode 2. Why would they put my name in the credit for an episode that I'm not in? Boom, and there I show up on that first one. That one made me pee. Then watching the opening, the montage and the music and everything, and then that first episode with the Kylies and then him beaming down and going hi. It was just the tone of it and the fun of it, and I don't want to say there was sly winks in it, because that sort of, I don't know, denotes something duplicitous, but it was welcoming. Like, my girlfriend and I watched it, and she had seen no track. She knew nothing about it. And she's like, wow, this is really fun and good. And we got talking about the themes in the episode and the sort of relevancy of it. And yeah, I thought that first season in particular just opened the door to a new generation of Trekkies. My niece, it's the first Star Trek that she's ever watched. You know, my brother gave her a little rundown on Captain Kirk. He's like, but you don't really need to know any of that. Like, let's just watch it. And just landed with a whole new generation. And I get excited about that, because I was probably 12 years old when I first started watching Star Trek, and there's my niece watching it, and being introduced. And I mean, so much of the original series to me was the humor of it. I mean, sure, there's the sort of cape of camp that we kind of put over it, but also, like, yeah, man, like McCoy and Spock and Kirk at the end with their little ting 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 at each other. I'm like, that's fun. It was just, yeah, captures that, I think.
I think it really, really does. It's been.
Have I successfully deflected season 2 questions?
Not even in the slightest. But oh, don't worry. I've got right. We need the episode titles. We need, do you come into episode 1 or is it straight or into episode 2? We'll keep an eye out for the name, because then we'll know. No, I mean, the Star Trek career of Bruce Horak is not over. I am delighted, as I'm sure everyone will be, to hear that. But whatever form we were to meet Bruce Horak in again, because obviously I'd love to say Hemmer's back. Maybe it's not Hemmer. Maybe it's a different character. Maybe it's Hemmer's gruff Andorian cousin. Remmer. I don't know. Friend of Shran. I don't know. But the happy news is that we get more Bruce, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up your arse, although it is a little bit, but it's that there is an ensemble that season 1 captured so well that I think it would be an awful shame if we were to lose too much of that, or obviously we can add new characters, this happens, but not too many new characters. You're at one new character. That's it. Yeah. So I'm interested to see in what way we will see Bruce again. And
I wish I could tell you.
That's
I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see season 2 in its completion with all of the bells and whistles, because yeah, it takes it to a whole new level. And I reflecting back on the whole experience, like walking around the hallways and being in engineering or sick bay or the bridge or whatever, like, and seeing how the environment is just so alive, and then to watch that next level up through the lens, and then everything that they add to it in the post, it's like they CG'd out my eyes for Hammer. Like every single frame that you see of my white eyes, those are not contact lenses. That's some graphic artist that's gone through frame by frame to add that. And I just get excited about what the technology can really do. I mean, it my right eye is artificial. My left eye has been irradiated. So there's pretty intense scarring. And when they're able to add prosthetics and then CG on that, I've always dreamed of like, oh, people ask me, it's like, if you could have surgery and get 20/20 eyesight, would you do it? Would you do it? I'm like, I don't have to. I just go and act it on screen and somebody will make you believe it. I get the best of both worlds. I mean, they've given me new eyes. And I think about just, down the pathway of disability activism, when you have artists who are performers that might be impaired in some way, you're able to not correct, but augment or celebrate or justify or whatever. It's like, yeah, so that we've got a visually impaired actor playing a visually impaired character. Well, let's take the eyes away, and now he's got telepathy. It's like, wow, I just got these doors open that yeah, it's really thrilling. And to me, being in the world of science fiction is an opportunity to see a lot of that to realization.
I think so as well. And plus, if we think science fiction, we'd like to think of a genre where any type of disability it shouldn't matter. It's science fiction.
Mhm.
We'll find a way to, just work around it or make it someone's power. In the real world, how have you found both Hollywood and Canada in terms of accessibility and support for actors or performers or artists with disabilities? Because I know you are yourself a passionate advocate for.
Mhm. Mhm. It's it's been a long journey, in some ways paralleled with my own journey of self-acceptance. As I mentioned, I didn't start using a white cane until I was in my 30s. And I really tried to hide that I was visually impaired. So I would learn all sorts of tricks to appear sighted, because I thought, well, if they knew that I've only got 9% vision, I'm not going to get this job. There's acting is hard enough, and it's looks and capability. And, sometimes it's just the casting director, how they feel on the day, or at least that was my perception of it. So I really tried to present a, a fully sighted version of Bruce Horak to the world. And as I started to actually embrace it and to explore it through painting, how do I actually see? Why am I trying to make a drawing that looks like a fully sighted person did this, when I see the world in a unique way? And maybe someone else can, for a moment, have a bit of empathy or compassion for the way that I experience the world, and vice versa. So as I went through this journey of painting, that was paralleled with, okay, I'm going to get a white cane. I'm actually going to use this. And suddenly it's like, oh, I'm walking upright. I don't have to hunch over to see where I'm going. And I can be upright, and I've got the cane moving. And suddenly, if I'm about to step onto a street and there's a car coming, someone will see me with a white cane and go, oh, that guy can't see. Let me help him. And the world is just opening in that way. And I experience this on the daily, really, as I'm more confident in my own abilities and confident in my identification. So as I have been, I'd say over the last 10 or 15 years, really digging into that, or not digging in, but exploring and expressing it, I feel like that support network outside of me has just been like the most welcoming cushion. Suddenly there were artists who identified with being visually impaired or disabled in some way, and they felt more confident to continue to create. And roles are being offered that are specifically asking, we're looking for someone who's got this life experience. Obviously, I don't have telepathy, but I have a visual impairment, and and I'm comfortable talking about it, and in my comfort with it. And certainly when you carry a cane, suddenly people, they know something's up and they start making assumptions, right?
Of
So
course.
and some of those are great, because hey, I don't see that truck coming, so please assume that I don't see it.
Yeah.
And then there's a spectrum, shall we say. And speaking of that spectrum, I think the support for it has just been opening and opening and opening. And I feel really grateful that I'm creating in this environment in Canada, and certainly at this time, because it's way more open and accepting than it was when I was starting out. And that, I speak about that myself personally. I'm more accepting, but also I think the community has opened to it as well. Yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Like, it's wonderful to hear because the last thing you ever want to hear is like horror stories or people just going, nope, closing the door in the face, or just saying, oh, we'd love to cast you, but I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure, and I know the stories are out there. I know it happens. So the more, the more people who have a bit of cop on about them, I'm really just summarizing everything into a tiny sentence there, but the more people have a bit of cop on about them, I think the better for everyone. Like there was,
I don't know what that expression means. Cop
oh,
on.
sorry, I went very Irish for a second, right? So cop on is one of those kind of, it's a catch-all, right?
Okay.
Cop on can be understanding. If someone has a bit of cop on, they have a bit of understanding. So when you say to someone, will you cop on? Generally, it means, will you stop acting that way? This is I can hear, right. My co-host Joseph is from Limerick in Ireland, and I can actually hear his laughter already watching me trying to explain cop on over Zoom. So there you go, show. That's a gift for you.
I like to ask the tough question, Sean.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The absolute fun that we had when Orla Brady snuck the word fecker into Star Trek Picard, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, she just said the F word." Well, not technically. No, that's just a shade. Okay, you'd get past the censor with that one. But where I've completely lost where I was in my in my questions there. So how you doing? You feeling good?
We're talking about copping on, which I think means something different in Southwest Calgary. I'm not sure.
Well, I think copping on and copping off are two very different things.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
That's right. Both of which can be a positive thing. I wanted to actually go back a second because you mentioned your first friend in 2011, the one who sat for you for the first time. You said you had known him for years and he had never known that you were as visually impaired. Was it that he didn't know you were visually impaired, or he didn't know you were as visually impaired as you are?
Well, he knew that there was something up, but he didn't know how blind I am. And I guess the phrase I hear a lot is that I present very well. People say that you present very well, which I sort of take as I try to take it as a compliment. But ultimately, because I had gone to theater school with him, he'd been on stage with me. We had gone to classes, et cetera, et cetera. So I was still very much in my, I figured out how to appear sighted phase. And
Gotcha.
so it was a really great conversation, and certainly through the portrait series, I have figured out better ways to describe it, better or more efficient ways, shall we say. So it's certainly, for me, it's been a great encouragement to continue to talk about it. And everyone, it's funny, I sat with an eye doctor for a portrait once, and he explained his philosophy of vision is that sight happens in your eye, but vision happens in your brain. The eye is just a tool, and depending on how it's formed, how it's shaped, you might need glasses to adjust or whatever. But these images come in, they're upside down. Your brain flips them around. Your brain knows the word for red. The eye is just simply projecting this whatever rods and cones and imbalances and electrical impulses and things like that. But vision truly happens in the brain, and we all have different brains. And so why would we all have the same vision? And that really struck me, of instead of thinking about this damaged eye that I have and how I'm seeing the world, it's like, well, yeah, but I might be working through a damaged eye, but my brain is still capable of learning, is still capable of expanding and understanding and different understandings. And I can hold two conflicting ideas in my mind at the same time. I can't do that with my eyes. I can't see two conflicting images, but the brain can split them. The brain can focus. And I find that really fascinating. So it continues to drive me to paint, to create shows, and hopefully I'll get to the bottom of all this by the time I have to go on stage tonight.
Worst case scenario, it'll take you, what is it, 1,000 hours? That's it. That's all it'll
That's
take.
right.
Yeah.
1,000 hours. Oh no! Don't quote me on that.
I don't know what you're talking about. Never heard a thing. Just really quickly, I want to touch on, you have done so much Shakespeare, which is, I think, anyone who wants to perform on stage at some point, they're going to be like, when can I do Shakespeare, please? Now, obviously, you're doing Richard III at the moment, and there was something you mentioned that was before we started recording, so I have to ask you again.
Okay.
I want everyone to know about this because this sounds amazing. Could you please tell me about this production of Macbeth that you put together? It sounds amazing.
Absolutely. Yes. So it was a piece created by myself and Rebecca Northend, my longtime artistic collaborator. And we have been joined by a young fella named Ellis Lalonde. And the three of us do a show called Goblin Macbeth. And the premise is that three goblins have discovered the complete works of William Shakespeare. And they've decided to try theater for the very first time in goblin history. They're going to put on a play. And they've decided to do Macbeth because it's the shortest and it's the bloodiest. And they sort of think it's a comedy. But they really don't understand why humans do theater. So the show starts in the lobby where the goblins break in and wrangle the audience into the theater and force them to sit to watch a play for the first time. And the technician shows up and says, "You can't be in this theater." And so they force the technician to run lights, otherwise they're going to eat them. And so and then we do a production, a three-person version of the Scottish play Macbeth. We cut it down to about 75 minutes, and Rebecca and myself play all of the characters. Primarily, I play Mackers all the way through, and she plays Lady M. But her goblin does various and sundry, and so do I. And it's a riot. The goblins have absolutely no reverence or understanding of Shakespeare. Well, they understand it. They actually speak it really well, but they're very poetical. They're not your Tolkien version of goblins, and they dismiss some of the myths about goblins in their culture. And we have got these silicone masks from a company called Composite Effects in the US. Check out their website. It's amazing what they do. And we got 3 goblin masks, and it just went like hotcakes. We did a production of it in Calgary in March of last year, which sold out. They brought us back in October to do it again. And then we've been picked up by Bard on the Beach in Vancouver, which will be running middle of August to middle of September of 2023. I should mention the year just in case someone's in the future watching. And then we're off to the Stratford Festival in Stratford, Ontario from, I think, the 20th of September to end of October. I don't know the exact dates of the Stratford Festival, but yeah. And then in the Vancouver production, Rebecca is currently working at the Shaw Festival, so she's being replaced by Colleen Wheeler, who is a Vancouver Shakespeare heavy hitter. So we're pretty thrilled. It's weird. It's real weird. Goblins doing Shakespeare, but we see, I think, having goblins perform as humans, we see the absurdity of humanity through that. And it's also very playful. There's a lot of improvisation, and yeah, we go off the rails on Shakespeare. I will say this though, having done Shakespeare for so long, the days that I had to show up on Star Trek and do any of the techno babble, it was very useful to have Shakespeare in the pocket, because it's like, it is English, but it's just a different side of it. Makes it easier to do techno babble.
That's it's funny. That is something you hear a lot in kind of actor retrospectives, or even while they're still performing, is that technobabble tends to be
nuts.
No, well, that's actually, hang on, we might just have a look and see, is it actually copywritten? No, but yeah, that the days where you do technobabble, it's a bit like, oh, this is going to be a hard day, isn't it? This is going to be the one that's going to take a few takes and everything. So there's the trick. Everyone follow Bruce's example.
Just
become
do some
a very
Shakespeare.
skilled, very skilled Shakespearean actor, with hopefully a silicon mask from composite
effects. Yeah.
Composite effects. Yep. And I can just I just have this image now.
Oh no, Sean, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing.
Absolutely fine. Sorry. You're a busy man.
No, I just will pause for a second. It must be the front desk. Hang on 1 second. It's weird. Hello? Okay, I'll come down in 20 minutes. Oh, it's at the door. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks. Bye. Apparently, I have a delivery. Okay.
Okay.
Do you have? Why would I pick up a landline? I have a landline in the hotel, and it never rings. So that's very strange.
That is so like, kind of like it's just, it's nice to see some retro technology every now and again.
Feel like I'm in a Coen Brothers movie at times. Like I'm living in a hotel. The front desk staff know my name. The cleaning lady, like, and then when I leave, she's like, "Would you like service today?" And I'm like, I feel like I'm in Barton Fink or something, like totally out of another world. Anyway,
That's good. As long as there isn't a wood chipper nearby.
no, thank God.
What I tell you, actually, but this is kind of because we're coming up toward the end, so I have one last big question for you. But the first thing I want to
Yes,
say
sir.
is you have been so generous with your time, and I seriously appreciate you taking the time to speak to me,
Oh,
especially on a
it's my
performance
pleasure,
day as
Sean.
well. Like, thank you so much.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. No, I've been really looking forward to this, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what you think of season two and some
I
ups and downs and
I
citation
am
observations. Yeah.
so excited. Just know that there will be an automatic down for any episode you're not in.
Great. I
So
appreciate that. If we could just start with a standard down.
cool. So how many downs do you think people would expect on that logic, Bruce?
Can I tell you in October?
Oh, go on then. Um,
Are you getting
so
around to any cons coming up?
I am hopefully. I don't know is the short answer. The long
Okay.
answer is I'm looking at, like, I'd love to do Vegas. I did
Oh
Vegas
my God.
last year. I would love to do Vegas this year.
Were you there
Um,
last year? Did I meet you last year? No, I did
we
not.
didn't meet last year. I was there. I was working in the vendor room.
Mm,
And so I'd say there's a strong chance we may have passed each other.
yeah.
And that's really on me because I'm the fanboy. I should have just come like, hi Bruce, how are you? um, but
Hopefully Vegas this year. Okay. Yeah.
that, like,
Yeah.
fingers crossed. If I can swing it, I will. It's like that. And then, so same question to you. This wasn't my last question. I'm going to ask it anyway. Same question to yourself. What kind
Please.
of con schedule is 23 looking like for you?
Well, I've currently got Trek Long Island, which is May 1920, I think. So coming up next month, which I'm pretty stoked about that. That'll only have been my second convention because my first was Vegas, which is an incredible way to start, really. And then I'm going to be at Vulcan in Vulcan, Alberta, which is
Oh,
like
amazing.
half an hour from my hometown. Like my family all lives down there. So, and I think it's their 30th year in Vulcan. Apparently there's a parade down the main street. And yeah, I'm just super stoked about that. And, I've got fingers crossed for Vegas. We'll see. Because if I did get invited to Vegas, I'm just putting this into the universe, please. It would be over my birthday, August 5th. And what better way
Oh,
in my world to do Star Trek convention, Las Vegas birthday? Yeah. So we'll cross our fingers and hopefully you'll be there too.
that would be amazing. Now I'm going to feel like a dick if I don't go. So okay, so that would be.
I'll feel like a dick if I don't get invited.
Actually, I tell you what, if neither of us go, we'll go and
Yep.
be like in another hotel, but in Vegas, and be like, Joe, we'll have our own convention,
That's
a
right.
birthday cake. Yeah. Um, I right. So my last question for you, as I say, Bruce, thank you so much again.
Oh, my
Um,
pleasure.
Bruce Horak, what
Hmm.
does Star Trek mean to you?
Oh, possibilities. Star Trek is all about possibilities and optimism for me. Yeah, I think what drew me to it in the early days was these great stories about explorers who had a curiosity and were willing to change their perceptions. Oh my God. And there's the phone again. You can cut me off at possibilities. One second. Hi. Hi. Great. I'll come down, actually. Thank you. Bye now. Next, there's going to be a banging on the door, and it's a guy with a wood chipper.
Okay, I mean, this is amazing. Bruce, thank you. So it was a beautiful answer, and thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't need it, but break all of the limbs this evening and tomorrow for the last performances. We will meet, whether it's Vegas, whether it's Canada, whether I'm the guy standing off. Exactly. I mean, like, I have to say, like, it's a bit of an absent one on my list, so I better go. But look, I'll wrap it up now because the phone will ring again. It's brilliant.
I've been here for 5 weeks. That's the first time it's ever rung. I mean, come on.
Do you know what it is? It's actually just Joseph, my co-host. He's the one ringing. Yeah, because he couldn't make. That's what it is. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to this quiet chaos that has been our lovely interview with Bruce. You are wonderful. You are awesome. We will be back next week for another episode of The War Room. I have been Sean. I have been joined by the coolest Aenar of them all. Thank you so much, everyone. Live long and prosper.
Thanks all.